So in this part of the tutorial, we're going to be looking at outputting specific values from this array. First of all, we're going to be doing this just echoing out the array contents, and then eventually we're going to start writing this function that allows us to do it dynamically. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and echo levels, and we know that this returns just literally array on the page like this. But what we can then do is we can use square brackets to access elements within that, and then we can use another pair of elements to another pair of square brackets to access more elements within that. So this will be an array within an array. Okay, so the first thing we want to access is 1. So say I wanted to access level 1's data. Now we've got another array here, so we're going to have to use another pair of square brackets, and we may want to access the name or the description. Now this is string data, so we need to provide this within single or double quotes. So I'm going to access level 1's name, and that's it. That's all we need to do. So let's go ahead and refresh, and we see that we've got level 1. Now, if we wanted to go ahead and access the level 1's description, we can do so like that. This is the first level. And then we can go ahead and access level 3's description, which will be the last level. And there we go. So that's how we access elements values. Now, for example, let's say we had another array in here. So we may have points, for example, just as an example. We may have another array in here, and then we may have, say, element, or we might just have, element 1 equal to 1,000 points. I don't know, it's just an example. So if we wanted to access level 3's points for 1, whatever that means, we can access level 3 points 1, and that will output 1,000. So let's go ahead and take a look at that there. So we've got 1,000. You'll also notice that this has updated because I'm still printing out the oval structure of the array, so you can see that happening there. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and get rid of this. We'll look at not dynamically, but runtime adding elements to our array. So let's just say we wanted to add a level 4. Now we obviously would define this beforehand, but again, this is just an example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say levels 4 is equal to, and I'm just going to put an empty string at the moment. Now already what we've done is we've added a 4th element to this overall levels array. So when I go ahead and refresh now, we can already see that we've got 4, and that's equal to nothing, or there's no data within this element of the array. So what we can now do is go ahead and say array, and then we can enter data within here. So we could go ahead and say levels 4 name level 4, and in a moment I'll show you a much easier way to do this. And then we could say description level 4 exclamation mark, inventive. So that would produce this result here. So what we could also do in this case is we could say level 4 name is equal to level 4, or not is equal, or we're assigning this value to this here. Now this doesn't already exist. We don't have an array within this 4, but what we've done is we've automatically done that like this. So we've created the element here, and then we've created this name within, and it's automatically created an array for us. So that's a short way to do that. Now it's unlikely that you're going to want to do that, so we're going to keep these 3 level definitions here, and we're going to go ahead and write a function called level data to pass in the level that we want to return the value from, and then the data that we want to grab. And what this is going to do is it's going to include a function inside to check whether that specific level actually exists, and we'll be doing that using the array key exists function. Now there's one thing that we need to do, which is going to lead me to the last part of the tutorial, and that's to create this levels variable as a global variable. Now I'm not going to discuss the benefits or the drawbacks to global variables. One drawback is that it's slightly slower, and some people argue that you shouldn't be adding data to the global namespace. But really PHP, the way PHP is set up is that it doesn't really matter that you do this, because it's not actually a global variable. It doesn't actually represent something global. It slows down your code very slightly, but it just depends if the benefits outweigh the risks. And the benefit here is that we're going to write much cleaner code. So we're going to turn this levels variable into a global variable, and we're actually going to then look later at the global namespace, or the global variables array. So what do I do to turn this into a global variable? Well, globals level. So we've got these square brackets back. That means that globals is an array, and we are adding this element here, and that's going to be an array. So essentially what we're doing is we have this overall globals array, which we're creating an array within, and then arrays within that. So we now have a three-dimensional array. We have an array within an array within an array. So we've got 3 dimensions to this array. Now we can do exactly the same thing here. For example, if I wanted to echo the level 1 description or the level 2 description, I could say globals level, which is now the name of our levels array. I could access to description. So this would produce this. Okay, and you'll notice here we've got an error now, and that's just because we have this undefined levels variable because we're still trying to output levels as opposed to globals level. So if we go ahead and copy this and paste this in here, oops, and just paste this in here, then we will receive this on the screen. So you've made it to level 2. We have got the description being output from this global level value or array. So what we're going to do now is we're going to write a function that returns this data for us. So it's a lot easier. We only need to pass the data that we want within a function. So I'm going to call this function level_data. Now, whether or not you've worked with functions, this is a really good way to introduce you to functions, because we've got we're going to be outputting data from this global array. So we want to have 2 parameters. The first is the level, and then the data that we want to retrieve from that level. So we're only going to go 1 dimension deep from this. So we're going to access the overall level, and then we're going to access this within here. So any other arrays within these arrays, this won't really count for. So bear that in mind. You would have to add more, and then if you do that, then there's obviously better ways to do it. Anyway, the first thing we want to do is go ahead and check if this array key exists. Now, what do I mean by that? I'll go ahead and create the if statement, and I'll go ahead and write the function in, array key exists. Now I want this to equal true before anything in here is run. So array key exists. What does this do? Well, the first thing that we pass in is the array key, which would be 1, 2, or 3. I've referred to them as key array element names or element labels, but really the technical name for these are keys, and these are the values, so key values. So this is a key, in other words, the level that we're passing in. So we want to check level, and we want to check this against the array that we are checking for it existing in. So in here, we copy this, paste this here. So we're checking for either 1, 2, or 3 within this overall thing, which would return true each time. If we tried to pass 4 into here, it would return false, and therefore this wouldn't work. So otherwise, I want to return false. In here, though, I want to output the data that the user requires. So how do I go ahead and actually run this function? Well, I use level data. I pass in the level that I want to obtain the value from, and then the data. Okay, so if I go ahead and echo this, nothing's going to happen. The reason being is that at the moment, this is executing in here and we're not returning false. What we can do is we can use var dump on this. Now what this is going to do, if I was to return true here, and I refresh, you see we've got bool true. So bool means boolean, which is either a true or a false value, and we're returning true here. Now if I was to go ahead and change this to 4, level 4 does not exist as an array key. So when I refresh, we get false back. So that's a really, really good way to use var dump as well, again with the return value of this function. But I don't want to do that. I want to grab this piece of data from here based on what level I pass through. So if I'm passing through level 1 and I want to grab level 1's description, what do I return? Well, I return globals level. I'm now accessing either 1, 2, or 3 here. So in this case, that's level. And here, I'm either accessing name or description or any other elements we add in, and that is data. So data goes in there. So we're returning within our levels array the level that we want to return and the data within each of these arrays that we want to return. Okay, so in this case it will return level 1's description, it will look for level 1, it will find description, which is represented by data, and it will return that value. So let's go ahead and run this. So hopefully now we're going to get out, this is the first level, we're returning the description. When I refresh, this is the first level. Perfect. So now what I can do is go ahead and return something different. So for example, level 3's description, refresh, the last level. So we now know that this function works. And if this was to return false, we could put the return value of this function in an if statement. If it returned false, then we could give an error to the user or something like that. Now I'm quickly going to end on the fact that we've used this globals array, but we never tend to really examine things like this. So I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of this. So I'll go ahead and comment this out, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this as well. And I'm going to go ahead and print $. In fact, no, let's go ahead and get rid of this. Get rid of this and pass this in here. So I'm just going to pass in globals. So what I'm now doing is printing R on globals, which will give me the visual representation of the globals array. Now we're going to see a lot of data here, some of which you may recognize or have seen before, some of which you wouldn't have. So now we have got a lot in here really. You can see that we've got level in here. Again, we've got this array, it's exactly the same structure of what we've been accessing. We've also got things like post, get, cookie, files, which you may have noticed if you're uploading files, setting cookies, or passing get or post data from a form. This now represents what would be what the values would be within this globals array when we have things like post and get data. So in this short series, we've looked at arrays, not in depth. We haven't looked at many array functions, but hopefully everything we've demonstrated here with the levels and the function that returns, we've used the array keys function. But essentially we've had a good look at arrays and how we can use them. And hopefully your understanding of arrays has got a lot better.